Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cheyenne's Forum. Today is September 9th, and here is our dear friend, Tom. Tom, how are you? Nice to see you.
Thank you. How are you?
Very good. Thank you so much. Tom,
If I could say one thing at the beginning,
sure.
today, September 9th, is the anniversary of when I became an FBI agent in 1979. And
Whoa.
so to all my classmates who are still with us, still out there, congratulations, happy birthday, or whatever happy you're supposed to be on your happy anniversary. But this is the day I became an FBI agent years ago, 1979.
1979. Congratulations. This is such a memorable day and such a big day to you.
Thank you.
And yeah, you're so proud to be a FBI agent through your life. And I think that's why you come out and say something about FBI, about these institute that you're proud for your lifetime. And thank
Right.
you so much. Thank you. Yeah. So, talk about FBI. When I grow up in China, FBI is a huge name. It's a huge name. We saw the movies, we saw the TV shows, and we really respect this name, FBI.
You know,
And
I did an interview for CCTV
see,
um,
we
back
win.
back when I was an assistant director
Mhm,
in charge of international operations, and I was at meetings in Beijing,
mhm.
and the embassy had received a request for me to speak on an interview show called Top Talk with
Top
a
talk.
Mr. Shri. And Top Talk was, in those days, it was similar to like Charlie Rose. They interviewed one person at a time and focused on a world leader or somebody. And
Mhm,
so they requested permission, knowing I was coming to Beijing in a couple of weeks for another conference, if
mhm,
they could interview me at the embassy in Beijing. And
mhm,
so the ambassador and everybody got involved in the discussion of it. And
mhm.
the way it would be conducted is they would interview me in English, and then they would use Chinese captions on the bottom of the screen. And
Ah,
so the reason was they didn't want to, I don't know, they wanted people to be able to understand it more, much like you're doing now with interviewing me in English. So they did that, and that show was similar to the US's 60 Minutes at the time, and
right.
it was a 1 hour show every Sunday evening.
Mhm,
And so 2 or 3 weeks later, that show, that recorded interview, was put on CCTV,
mhm.
and then they let the embassy know. And my office know how many people viewed it on their channels. And, you know, CCTV had about 6 or 8 cable channels around the world.
Right.
And so they told me the very first night viewership in China on a Sunday evening, about 3 weeks later,
Mhm,
was about 300 million people. And then it went out over the worldwide CCTV network. So they
mhm.
told us that they were aware within a month, 2 billion people watched that interview on the Chinese network. So
Wow.
it aired here in the United States and all over the world. So I was very honored to do that. But interestingly, you just mentioned the reputation of the FBI in China. In
Mhm,
2002, I had helped open the office of the FBI in Beijing.
mhm,
Before that, we had an office in Hong Kong,
mhm,
covered China from Hong Kong.
mhm.
But the Chinese wanted us to have an office in Beijing. We wanted to have an office, so I opened that office basically,
Mhm,
and that was part of the reason why they wanted to do this interview. We had some huge cases with the
mhm,
Chinese police at that time, Bank of China and some other um, organized crime, many other cases.
mhm,
And anyway, the interview began with Mr. Shri saying, you know, here in China,
mhm.
The FBI is seen by the people on TV shows and on
Right.
movies and all that. And you know, in all of these shows and movies, the FBI agents are 10 foot tall and strong and smart and dedicated.
Yep.
And is that true? I said, absolutely.
Uh-huh. That's a
Yeah,
good
that was true.
question, actually.
Yeah. So anyway, it was a great interview. It was an hour long, and I have a copy of it on DVD, and it was just a terrific interview.
I can research at YouTube. I think the YouTube will have that interview. Mr. Shui used to be a very famous reporter of
Yeah.
CCTV. He's one of the top reporters in CCTV. So you make big name on that.
Yeah, he was very articulate. His English was perfect.
Uh-huh.
My English was pretty close to perfect. But
Drink
yeah, we
it.
talked about some of the cases, and we had some huge organized crime cases. And it was interesting in China.
Mhm,
One of the cases we discussed had just happened a couple of years earlier, which is why they wanted the FBI to have a permanent office there.
mhm.
The manager of the branch of Bank of China in Kaiping, China,
Oh,
embezzled hundreds of millions of dollars.
I see. I see.
And then eventually he ended up in Las Vegas
Right.
in the US spending much of the money. And
Yeah.
so I had a separate trip to Beijing back then, 2002. I was running the organized crime program when it started, but I
Right.
had a separate trip where the Minister of Public Security, who was in charge of all law enforcement in China,
Hmm.
asked our help. Can you help us get that money back? He stole all this money.
Hmm.
And I said, well, stealing money from a Chinese bank
Hmm.
is not illegal. However, in the United States, if you spend money that you obtained illegally, that's
Hmm.
money laundering. I
Hmm.
said, in order for us to charge him with money laundering, we would need to send a couple of agents, accountant agents, to
Hmm.
Kaiping, work with your police, and prove the original embezzlement that he
Hmm.
stole the money from the Bank of China
Right.
before he went around the world and came to Las Vegas, so that
Hmm.
the money he spent in Las Vegas was stolen money.
Hmm.
And so they said, well, we'll have to talk to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the party. And this, everybody and their uncle had to approve it in China. I said, fine. If you
Hmm.
want any help getting your money back, approve it. And
Hmm.
then I'll send 5 or 6 accountant agents
Hmm.
to Kaiping to work with your police. So finally, on that trip, they said, okay, we agree. And I dispatched agents that went to Kaiping. And then we brought several Chinese police and
Hmm.
bank officials from Kaiping to Las Vegas to
Hmm.
testify about the investigation and about the embezzlement by
I,
this guy.
okay,
And
there will.
so
Mhm,
anyway, he was convicted in Las Vegas, U.S. federal court, of
mhm,
money laundering. He
mhm.
was sentenced to 18 years
In
in
American.
prison, in U.S. federal prison. Now
Mhm,
there's a treaty agreement worldwide that if you get a lengthy prison sentence in another country,
mhm.
you can you can make a petition to serve that sentence at home. And so
Oh,
he did that because now he was poor and his family would not be able to visit him in the United States. And
mhm,
so I agreed to it with the State Department
mhm,
and with Ministry of Foreign Affairs from China.
mhm.
And he got sent back to prison in China.
Right.
Now, what was interesting was that people in China were saying, he's he might be in danger here because I said no, 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 he will be a celebrity in
Mhm,
prison
mhm,
because he has made the Chinese police look great.
mhm,
And Mr. Shree asked me about that because
mhm,
that their cooperation enabled us to get the conviction
mhm.
and send him back. So
Right.
now he's serving jail time in China.
Right.
And I'm interviewed on that interview where he asked me about the work of the Chinese police, and
Mhm,
people in China don't think they're that efficient or anything like that. I said no, in this case they were great,
mhm,
very efficient, worked very well with our agents, FBI agents in China and in the US,
mhm,
and it worked out. So anyway, the lawyers for the subject put a petition in. Could the FBI check on his well-being once a month while he's in jail? I said,
mhm,
no, we don't do that. But the State Department, if they want to check on him, that's fine. But I
mhm.
said, the fact is, he will not be in danger because he's a celebrity,
Mm-hmm.
because he was able to do all of this and still be brought back to China. I said they will be protecting him
Mm-hmm.
as far as they could possibly do while he's in jail there.
It's
Meantime, we we started seizing the properties that he bought illegally, plus the bank accounts where there was still money. And
mm-hmm.
in the U.S., when you do a seizure like that, the
Mm-hmm.
proceeds go to the Marshal Service to auction off and to get the funding up.
Sure.
And then normally, in most cases, like drug arrest, where the properties are confiscated, in most cases, the proceeds go into the U.S. Treasury.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, the FBI, petitioned, return the proceeds to China.
Oh.
And so I went to a ceremony. The Secretary of State at the time was Colin Powell.
Mm-hmm.
And Colin Powell and I went to a ceremony at the Chinese embassy in Washington where
Mm-hmm.
we gave the ambassador, it was, a check
Mm-hmm.
symbolizing the transfer of money back to China. It
Mm-hmm.
was, I forget, $600 million, something in that area. He had already spent a couple hundred million, which couldn't be recovered, from partying and transportation and a number of things. But the majority of the money was recovered and returned to China. And therefore, the Chinese police, as a result of that, the relationship with the Chinese police and what I said about the Chinese police helped China invite the FBI, please open an office in Beijing. We could use you
Right.
here all the time. And the
Is
other
the office
issue,
still there, Tom? Is the Beijing office still there?
yes, yeah,
Okay, great.
because what happened is when I was in charge of the organized crime program
Mm-hmm.
in the late 90s and up until 2002, at
Mm-hmm.
that time, we had a number of intellectual property cases where research done in the United States, whether it was high tech, Microsoft or
Mm-hmm.
other high tech companies, was being stolen by Chinese spies and
Mm-hmm.
taken back to China.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Well, then what happened is that after 9/11, it was harder for Chinese students that graduated from MIT or advanced technology schools
Mm-hmm.
to get jobs and stay in the United States. Our immigration was tightened up greatly. So, in many cases, the students graduated here and went back to China. And
Mm-hmm.
so now they weren't available to be hired in the US by Intel and Microsoft and Apple, the other big high-tech companies. So those companies then opened research centers in China,
Right.
mainly in Beijing. So now these students graduating with their great degrees from the United States would go home to China and
Mm-hmm.
work in those Intel centers.
Right.
Well, now what happens is intellectual property is being stolen by organized crime from those Intel centers in China.
Mm-hmm.
So now I get a request to meet with the Minister of Public Security, and he was, the FBI has got to help us. They're stealing our technology. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
really? And back when they were stealing ours, oh, no, that's not true. We're not stealing yours. There's no such thing. But now that their technology was stolen, please help us. Please help us.
Mm-hmm.
So we did. And we had many great cases with the Chinese, the Ministry of Public Security, and other police agencies there to help them not lose intellectual property or not or get it back if they'd already lost it, or find the people that did that and punish them. So
Mm-hmm.
we had the beginnings of a great relationship in China with
Mm-hmm.
our office in Beijing,
Mm-hmm.
and still our office in Hong Kong. And so that was among the topics that Mr. Sri wanted to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, how did that all work? How well did it work having the FBI work so closely with the
Mm-hmm.
Chinese police? I said it was fantastic. We have a
Right.
terrific relationship with the Chinese police.
Right. So we're talking about 20 years ago, maybe 20, 25 years ago.
That case was in around 2000, 2001. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I
We
remember,
opened the office this 2002. We
okay,
officially opened our legal attache office in Beijing.
sure. Yeah, that was a very, very famous case. Yeah, you can see the report everywhere in Chinese newspaper, even the newspaper here in American. And
Right.
everybody was that China Bank, a Bank of China, and Kaiping
Kaiping
branch.
branch.
Yeah. And I forgot the
I
name.
think the original, I think his embezzlement was almost $1 billion.
Yeah, it's a huge, I think it's the biggest number in Chinese history
Yeah,
for this kind of case. So
right.
that made history. Thank you so much for just tell us the wonderful story
Well,
behind
I
this
was so thrilled
case.
to be part of that, to be, work so closely with the Chinese police to help make that happen. And then to have Mr. Shree talk about it
Right.
and help us brag about it on Chinese television.
So this is very good cooperation with Chinese government, Chinese police. And actually, today's topic is about Chinese spy. And we have a big news that happened in New York. And then I think her last name is Song. Miss Song, she worked as assistant of New York governor, two governors. And right now, this is excuse me, big news right now. And she was fined. I think I don't want to say she's a spy, but she did not follow the law, registered as a foreign government agent, as some other indicate. But I just wonder that it's FBI, like you said, have a very good relationship with China
But
and
you
China.
can you can have a very good relationship with
Yeah,
countries,
right,
even our allies spy
right.
on us.
Yeah, that's the
So
normal
for example, when the
operation.
United States sells or delivers an F-16
Mm-hmm.
to NATO countries, Poland, for example, or Germany, or one of those,
Right.
or to Israel,
Mm-hmm.
or to other countries, the first thing that happens is the airplane or the technology we send them is
Mm-hmm.
about 70 or 80% of the capability of our actual. So
Right.
if we have an aircraft that can launch a missile 100 miles and hit
Mm-hmm.
a small target, they
Mm-hmm.
change the technology in that aircraft that can only shoot 50 miles.
Mm-hmm.
It can't shoot 100 miles. That
Mm-hmm.
way, if the enemy steals the plane,
Mm-hmm.
or if the government sells the plane to somebody else, or if that government becomes our enemy, if they get into a dogfight or some other battle with the United States, our military always has superior
Right. Right.
equipment. So now what happens is those countries, even our friends, commit massive espionage in the United States,
Right.
trying to get that rest of the technology package. Now, much of that research for that technology, the heads-up displays and the missile launchers and all of that, much of
Mm-hmm.
that is done at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, Dayton, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dayton, Ohio, we used to joke about that when I was still an FBI agent, that
Mm-hmm.
they had more Chinese spies in Dayton and other countries than anywhere else in the world,
Oh.
because they were opening restaurants and laundromats and grocery stores and bowling alleys, you name it, and
Mm-hmm.
then trying to develop spies with the local Air Force personnel assigned to that base when they went into town to eat at a restaurant or shop at a store or whatever. They
Right.
were
Right.
targeted then by the spies from those countries. And in some cases, it might be beautiful women trying to, flirt with them and
Oh,
seduce them.
that's a
We,
one way.
yeah, we call that honeypot
Uh-huh.
or a honey trap.
Uh-huh.
But regular espionage, regular methods, or if an Air Force person gets in financial trouble, they somehow make friends with somebody who can help them out of the financial trouble. So we had a huge number of cases out of Dayton
Mm-hmm.
that had to do with U.S. technology being stolen, in most cases by our friends.
Oh,
By
wow.
our friends. They wanted the rest of the jet technology that we didn't give them. They wanted the rest of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we didn't want anybody else to have it but the United States. You have that issue now in the Ukrainian war,
Mm-hmm.
because many of the missile launchers and equipment that we've sent to the Ukraine, very sophisticated high-tech equipment, we don't want to train Ukrainians how to use specific high technology, because if they defect to Russia,
Mm-hmm.
they might sell our equipment or sell our technology. So in
Mm-hmm.
many of those cases, that's why the U.S. almost from the beginning has had, when we send high-tech equipment there, we send our technicians with it so
Um,
that we use that equipment, access our satellite system and other computer systems in our Defense Department, because we don't want anybody else to know how to do it, including so-called friends. So
mm-hmm.
that still goes on to this day. Now, the other method of espionage, which is very typical, would be to infiltrate political parties or politicians in high places. Now, for example, Dianne Feinstein,
Right.
your former senator for so many years
Mm-hmm.
in California,
Right.
her chauffeur, her driver, was a Chinese spy for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So if she's in the back seat of the car talking to somebody, this guy's listening to all of it and then sending it back to China. So that's for one. You remember Eric Swalwell, whatever,
Like
uh,
fun, right?
congressman from California, having an affair with Fang Fang, you know,
Mm-hmm.
young Chinese woman who was a spy from China,
Right.
sleeping with him. They have a long affair.
Mm-hmm.
He's still out there as a politician.
Mm-hmm.
And you have many other cases. Now you have this latest case with Governor Hochul's office in
Right.
New York.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's changed. So these spies are still trying to get jobs in high positions with important people,
Mm-hmm.
be able to attend all these meetings, be able to
Right.
be involved in all of these high-tech discussions
Mm-hmm.
and do that. Now you raised the issue earlier. Why does it seem it's mostly Democrats?
Exactly. That's my question.
Good question. Maybe they should ask uh, the Democratic candidate for president at the debate.
Mm-hmm.
Ask Kamala, why are so many Chinese spies successful going against Democratic politicians?
Right. You look at the cases recently, every single one involved is Democrats. So that's a trend. So why the trend is like that? Are they getting close to the Chinese government, or are they
Yeah, very much.
what happened? And also Feinstein. So she had a spy with him for 20 years. So then what's the result? What's the outcome? They
No,
catch the spy and the
no,
find the spy.
no, they got away with it.
So this part I just don't understand.
So we don't know how much damage was done,
Hmm.
and and we don't know how aggressively today.
Right.
Normally, the FBI investigations are against people involved with the Democratic Party. They seem
Hmm.
to get away with a lot. It certainly appears that way, and the public information going out and all of that, that they're not as aggressive with Democratic politicians as they are with Republicans.
Right, right. And
And
I
not
remember,
just Republicans, but conservatives,
right.
conservative journalists, talk show hosts.
Hmm.
Uh, that's ongoing. That's still happening. And I think that as long as the Biden administration stays in power, which technically is only until January.
Hmm.
However, if Kamala Harris gets elected, this will continue and maybe be worse.
Right, right. So this is the part that most of people don't understand. If a spy is with a American politics, like Feinstein, for example, is a very good example. For 20 years, do you think Feinstein's okay with it? Do you think she doesn't really know what his driver really is?
I don't know.
Right?
I don't know.
Question.
Because in most of those types of cases, the FBI will go to the person and
Mm-hmm.
warn them, say, you should not have this person working for you. This
Right.
person, we have, evidence that they're going to compromise the information based
Mm-hmm.
on what you give them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm assuming that probably happened because that would be normal procedure.
Sure.
But we also know how arrogant these politicians are, and they're only going to listen to what they want to listen to. So, like Swalwell with Fang Fang and some of these other cases that were so obvious,
Mm-hmm.
then what?
So,
Then what happens? Is governor of New York
right.
embarrassed or ashamed that these people worked for her? I
She's
doubt it. I
angry.
doubt it.
She said, I'm so angry. I didn't know anything about it.
Oh, she's angry. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Okay.
So this is my question. Do we have any law to regulate like politics?
Not
Like,
specifically politics, but people, we have espionage laws, and if they're
right.
caught up in a scheme by
Mm-hmm.
a foreign government,
Oh,
especially
right.
an adversary government, if they're
Mm-hmm.
caught up in that and we're aware of that, yeah, we can prosecute them.
Right.
If they were aware of it, we could prosecute the politician who's
Mm-hmm.
aware.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I don't know how anxious these days since the Biden administration came to power. This is the first time in my lifetime, especially my almost 30 years in the FBI as an agent,
Mm-hmm.
to actually see FBI complicit with the Democratic Party. And we've never seen that before. It was
Mm-hmm.
taboo when I was in to be political that way.
Mm-hmm.
What they're doing today about that, I don't know. And you see them going way out of their way, not just against Republicans, but pro-lifers, people
Mm-hmm.
demonstrating at an abortion clinic,
Mm-hmm.
any number of activities which appear to be
Mm-hmm.
anti-Democratic Party or
Mm-hmm.
anti-Joe Biden and now anti-Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. We'll see if the public now has seen enough
Mm-hmm.
to do something about it, which would be absolutely don't elect Democrats into power. And I'm not just talking about the nominee for president,
Mm-hmm.
but senators, congressmen, all the way down,
Mm-hmm.
because the Democratic Party, their members stick together unbelievably, like an organized crime family.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in a local county somewhere and you elect a Democrat to be dog catcher,
Mm-hmm.
then in a couple of years, they're going to be a
Yeah.
state senator or a state representative. Then they're going to run for U.S. Congress. You all the while being 100% Democrat. And you look at this now. If you look at the border situation, the 20 million people that have illegally come into the United States, you don't see the Democratic Party trying to have any law or agreeing to any law to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
So why is that? Why are they unanimous in that kind of policy making?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just hope American can realize that Democrats is not the Democrats that we thought and you thought. They are a Marxism party.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
they went beyond a little bit socialist, the
no,
Bernie Sanders and those kind of people. They went beyond socialism
right,
to communism
right,
to pure Marxism.
right.
At pure Marxism, you go against the family, you
Mm-hmm.
go against, the institutions, the
Mm-hmm.
history of the country. You try to abolish that, tear down monuments, tear up the Constitution. All
Mm-hmm.
of those activities that they engage in are completely anti-American.
Right, right.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly. Anti-American.
Now, here's the problem. The media backs them up. And so the average voter that's
Mm-hmm.
going about their life and not paying attention, they don't
Mm-hmm.
realize how terrible these policies have become
Mm-hmm.
anti-American. They
Mm-hmm.
just don't know. So when you see these polling numbers that Kamala Harris and Trump are close, neck and neck, for what? Are you kidding?
I don't trust the number.
Well,
Do
I
you?
don't trust them either. I think the polls are out of line, but
Mhm.
but I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be an interesting time when
Right,
Trump debates her.
right, right. It's tomorrow. Cannot wait to see.
Yeah.
And then I remember Christopher Wray actually talked to in the hearing, Congress hearing, and he said they are focusing on China right now. And the case involved the Chinese spy is like 10 at least per day, 10 new cases per day related to China spies. So it seems like it's very serious. Is that just begin for this 10 years or it's begin a long time ago?
It's gone on since, I became an agent,
Mm-hmm.
like I mentioned, September
Right.
9th, 1979.
Uh-huh.
We learned about that in training academy. It's
Mm-hmm.
been going on since, all through the 80s, all through the 90s, the
Mm-hmm.
2000s, all the way to the present time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's never been a time that I'm aware of during my entire career and since
Mm-hmm.
that China wasn't actively engaged in aggressive espionage in the United States.
Mm-hmm. So,
Never.
well, so you mean Christopher Wray did not tell the truth, or?
Christopher Wray, I'm not a big supporter of Christopher Wray because he became aware of the allegations of bias within the FBI
Mm-hmm.
8, 9 years when he became the director. I'm going to clean that up. That's not going to happen anymore. That's
Mm-hmm.
not true. He hasn't cleaned anything up when it comes to agents that are doing things. Back when we had, Strzok and those kind of biases going on,
Mm-hmm.
and then that continued under his watch or got worse. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't, he sits there and these congressional hearings, and he looks
Right,
great. His hair is all beautiful, and
right.
and then he starts talking. I'm not aware of that, or I can't talk about it. His favorite answer, and I have said when I was an agent and gave speeches to Rotary clubs and you name it, television interviews, I said this is not James Comey's FBI or Robert Mueller's FBI or Louis Freeh's FBI or the President of the United States' FBI. It's the American people's FBI. And
Right.
right now, ever since those days, you don't see any evidence of that. You see the FBI, I think right now more than I've ever seen, being a tool of the Democratic Party
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
and no transparency. Every time Ray testifies, oh, I can't talk about that. That's a
Mm-hmm.
pending investigation. Everything's a pending investigation. Okay, how many years? How
Mm-mm.
many years has Hunter Biden's laptop been pending?
Right,
4 years?
right.
No, no. All these cases that he says he can't talk about, he can talk about generally. He
Mm.
can't give up national security secrets. He can't identify informants. He
Right.
can't say if a foreign government has confidentially given us important information. Yeah, he
Right.
has to protect the source of the information,
Mm.
sources and methods.
Right.
We refer to that as he goes way beyond that. They give no information. They give no information to Congress or
Mm.
to the American public unless
Mm.
it can absolutely not be helped. What do we do? And then look at the attempted assassination on President
Right.
elect, President nominee Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Um, During that whole investigation, we can't talk about it.
Mm.
Then in July, within a month of the allegation, you have many scientists that say they wonder what drugs that shooter might have been on
Mm.
because that might dictate if he was like a Manchurian candidate
Right.
trained to do this assassination, who might have been involved in that. And the FBI sends the body to be cremated about 3 weeks after the shooting. What?
Right.
That body is still a piece of evidence. And even though there's an official autopsy, which we
Right.
still have not heard,
Mm-hmm.
there's a toxicology report, which means they draw the blood and the body fluids from the person being examined and
Mm-hmm.
analyze that. What chemicals are in the system? What drugs might he have been taking?
Mm-hmm.
And no report. They don't let that become public. So
Mm-hmm.
we don't know anything really
Mm-hmm.
about that shooter that we should at least know a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that? Why is that, Mr. Ray, that you won't disclose pieces of information that the public should know?
Yeah, I agree. I agree totally. And I think that the investigation should go to the people who have the spy on in front of them. Like you should investigate the governor of New York. We should inspire the Frenstein. Of course, we cannot. He's died, but she's died. But um, I think FBI should focus on why these Democrats politics have the relationship, very close, long-term relationship with
Yeah,
spies. I think that's
exactly.
the question.
Exactly.
That's the question. And also, the other thing I like to asking you is about the CIA. I remember last time you mentioned that there are so many government changes around the world that involve CIA or CIA have something to do with this the government changes around the world. So my question is why they do that? Is that benefit to American people, to American, or it benefits some other group?
Well, the CIA was founded in 1947,
Mm-hmm.
part of the National Security Act of 1947.
Mhm.
And the original idea was that they would have this elaborate ability to gather information openly and honestly from all over the world,
Mhm.
from reading every newspaper in the world, listening to every TV show or radio show, get
Mhm.
all of the information that's being put out in public or even privately within different countries, and
Mhm.
then analyze that information and provide summary reports to the State Department and to the White House and to the president specifically. And
Mhm.
so that's a great idea.
Mhm.
Somewhere along the line, right after inception in the 40s and then into the 50s, they created basically a like a pseudo military arm to
Mhm.
conduct more than espionage, but regime change in countries we don't like. So the idea was at that time, the scare in the world was communism. You think that would be a scare now? No. But at the time, oh my God, we cannot have these communist countries or leftist countries leaning toward communism. We have to interfere in their elections. Or
Mhm.
if they've already elected somebody who's a leftist, we have to take them out, eliminate them.
Mhm.
So there were many good books I had read. I read one book called Legacy of Ashes, where it
Mhm.
discussed that in South America, Latin America, the CIA had attempted to overthrow every government unless the government was a right wing military junta, like Argentina, Juan
Mhm.
Perón, those kind of governments. So, or Chile at the time, governments like that. And the CIA, the right wing governments, the CIA helped stay in power, taught them how to torture people, taught them how to, you know, gather information through wiretapping and other, or gave them the equipment so that they could do it. So
Mhm.
that was very, very common for decades. Then, it was basically a worldwide program,
Mhm.
but somebody knowledgeable in South America wrote that book. The If you look at from those days to the modern, then President Truman at the time, president at the inception of the CIA,
Mhm.
later admitted it was a mistake to let the CIA have covert action authority. In other words, the ability to go in and do these kind of election interfering or help commit a coup in a country. Then, Eisenhower, when he was president, similar thing. He thought the CIA had gone too far, but by that time, they basically lost control. Then you have Kennedy come in. When President Kennedy becomes president, he inherits many ongoing activities that the CIA was engaged in. However, the CIA was engaged in trying to effect regime change in Cuba. Kennedy and his brother Bobby Kennedy worked with the Chicago Mafia in the United States to send assassins over and over into Cuba to take out Fidel Castro because he had become a communist, and we can't have communism 90 miles from the shores of Florida.
Mhm.
So even Kennedy realized what they were up to, but that didn't change. And then you have the CIA doing various undercover operations or training people who would come to the United States from Cuba, escaping Castro, and
Mhm.
then training them. Okay, we're going to teach you to go back into Cuba and overthrow Castro, and we're going to give you all kinds of military support to help you do it. Now, Kennedy, when Alan Dulles, director of the CIA, when they approached Kennedy about supporting a coup attempt, violent coup attempt, military action in Cuba, he said, absolutely. If you can do it on your own with your own military assets, private planes, paint them all white, do whatever, but we will not have the United States government or military openly participate in helping these refugees go back to Cuba and
Mhm.
throw out Castro. And because the whole world will turn against the United States, how can you pick on a small country like Cuba? They're no real threat to the United States, and
Mhm.
and so that's when the CIA initially really began to hate Kennedy because he would not when their soldiers got caught up on the beach and the Cuban military defeated them. the military leaders and the CIA asked Kennedy, okay, give us military support, have U.S. military planes help support them on the beaches. Kennedy said, no, I told you I would not do that.
Mhm.
And so they all got captured or killed. And the CIA blamed Kennedy and had a vicious grudge against him because he didn't help the invasion. Well, he had already told them they're not going to get any official help from the United States government. The world will be against it. And so that was among the many feuds that happened with the CIA and all that. Now, go to the modern time, the CIA helped overthrow the government in Ukraine in 2014. The
Mhm.
Ukrainians had elected a president who was basically pro Russian. And basically, the Ukraine government and the Russian government had a great relationship for many years, were allies.
Mhm.
Then the CIA, that's not good enough. They throw this guy out. He has to run back to Russia to seek protection.
Mhm.
And they start putting in people we wanted, all the way to the present, which is Zelensky, the current head. And he's not even officially the head. His term expired. But the guy that's so at the moment running the government of Ukraine, he was put there by the U.S. CIA and State Department. Victoria Nuland at the State Department was involved in
Okay.
this. So that's who they have. We committed a coup in the Ukraine.
Mhm.
And the issue for Putin was, wait a minute, a couple of things then came up that the extension of Crimea into the Black Sea
Mhm.
is Russia's only warm water naval port.
Right.
At the northern port in Murmansk is underwater and under ice most of the time. That's where their northern submarine base is and their fleet, but it's way up in the Arctic Circle.
Mhm.
So the naval base at Sevastopol in Crimea, um, right now, they're very fit. When Ukraine was a strong ally of Russia, they didn't worry about it.
Mhm.
But then when the coup happened, Putin decides, wait a minute, Crimea was originally not part of the Ukraine. Crimea itself and that naval base were part of Russia before the Soviet Union, going back to the 1770s. It
Mhm.
was a Russian territory, a Russian base. Now, the
Right.
Crimean War, which happened in 1850, was England and France invading Crimea to try to remove Russia from controlling Crimea. They failed. They were defeated. So Crimea stayed the way it was all the way until 2014, when Putin decides, you know, he wanted the new government in the Ukraine, Zelensky, and the new guy before him, he
Mhm.
wanted them to commit that they will stay neutral. They will not join NATO.
Mhm.
And originally, Zelensky said, okay, we won't join NATO.
Right.
But Putin could see that they were probably going to take Crimea. And so
Mhm.
he took Crimea first to
Right.
protect Russian control of their naval base in the Black Sea, which is
Mhm.
their only warm water naval port in the world.
Mhm.
So anyway, the Crimean control went to Russia because of Putin. So then
Mhm.
Putin is negotiating with Zelensky to stay neutral. That's all. You can do what you want, just don't join NATO, because we don't want NATO, which means US, weapons on our border.
Mhm.
And Zelensky agrees. His team were negotiating with Putin's team in Istanbul, Turkey, and came to that agreement.
Mhm.
Suddenly, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom,
Mhm.
flies from London to Kiev. He
Right.
tells Zelensky, you will not have peace with Russia. You will not have an agreement.
Mhm.
We will supply whatever you need for as long as it takes for you to fight Russia. We'd like regime change in Russia. We'd like Putin thrown out, all
Mhm.
of that, so that we could get Crimea back and so that NATO will become involved with the Ukraine. And
Mhm.
then that'll put weaponry, US weapons, missile launchers, equipment right on the Russian border, Ukraine-Russia border.
Mhm.
And the idea, from Putin's standpoint was, wait a minute, the United States, when the Soviet Union put missiles in Cuba, 90 miles from Miami, then you couldn't tolerate that. You had to threaten invasion and send the military, do everything you did to get Nikita Khrushchev to agree, take that set of weapons out.
Mm-hmm.
Now you want to do it to Russia. You want to put US and NATO military hardware, equipment, technicians right on the border. And if that happens, missiles that we would launch toward Russia could hit Moscow in 8 minutes. That's how much time they would have to climb in a shelter before our missiles would land on top of their capital.
Mm-hmm.
So Putin just said, no, you're not joining NATO and you're not maintaining ownership of Crimea.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what led to the current war.
Right, right. So CIA play a big role in this wars. It sounds like thank you first. Thank you so much for giving us the information about how CIA start from. So it's just start from gathering information and do some analyst and then just provide some reporter to the leaders. And then it changes gradually. So the first what the how this changes, the huge changes started. Who started the changes? Because this is only a information collection institution. And right now it's become a professional turnover foreign government agent.
Yeah,
So,
almost from the beginning, the
right.
covert action side of the CIA took hold. And the reason was during World War II, there
Mm-hmm.
was an organization within the US military called the Office of Strategic Services, OSS. It
Mm-hmm.
was run by a guy named Bill Donovan, military guy. And these were semi spies that went in behind enemy lines in Europe during World War II
Mm-hmm.
to work with the underground groups, sabotage German railroads or military bases, and
Mm-hmm.
like that. But the main recruits to OSS were military. So the idea was that they would become commandos and go into enemy territory and commit murder or do whatever they had to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after World War II, you have 2 years where CIA is being proposed. And the National Security Act of 1947, it
Mm-hmm.
creates the CIA, but it basically creates the intelligence community as we know it today. So
Mm-hmm.
all of these other agencies were begun: CIA, NSA, geospatial mapping, all of these various components which make up 10 or 12 agencies of the national security apparatus of the US
Right.
come into effect. Now, the CIA, guys like Donovan, basically come in and take charge. And they say, we're used to overthrowing governments and trying to commit coups and assassinate foreign leaders and all of those things. We should be doing that now because communism was starting to take hold in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And many were arguing, in fact, that the real winner of World War II was not the United States or the United Kingdom, it was Stalin.
Mm-hmm.
Because when the war ended, the US didn't gain any territory. The United Kingdom barely hung on to what little it had, or even if it had a lot. So they lost India and many of the other components of the United Kingdom. But
Mm-hmm.
Stalin takes control of Eastern Europe.
Right.
So all of those countries from Hungary, Czech Republic, Poland, Slovakia, all of these countries become part of the so-called Warsaw Pact,
Mm-hmm.
which are really like NATO's equivalent, only loyal to the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
And so now the threat is that they're going to take over Eastern Europe, or they take over Eastern Europe. But
Right.
now the idea is that they might invade Western Europe. So
Mm-hmm.
Western Europe needs NATO.
Mm-hmm.
And the US and Canada are the only non European countries that join NATO.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is the European countries are supposed to provide a percentage of their gross domestic product. So 2% of GDP is supposed to go to fund NATO to protect all European countries. And what evolves is the United States ends up funding almost all of it
Right. Yeah.
until Trump comes along as
Mm-hmm.
president and says, oh, wait a minute, if you don't pay your fair share, we're not going to protect you. We're not, because there was part of the alliance of NATO is if one country gets attacked, it's the equivalent of all of them getting attacked.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is if Russia attacks Germany or Poland or somebody, then the United States agrees to help, send troops, do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump basically says, wait a minute, you've got to pay your fair share. It's not asking too much. It's
Mm-hmm.
not the United States' job anymore to protect the rest of the world, especially NATO countries.
Mm-hmm.
So immediately, many of the countries start pouring billions of dollars into NATO.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what started it in the modern times.
Mm-hmm. They do have the money. So, well, this you talk about the Russian and Ukraine war. It seems like in America, so many people think Putin would like to have Russia become another Soviet Union, back to communist party or back to communist country. Do you agree with it?
Absolutely not. And
Mm-hmm.
what proves that that was not Putin's intent is he's been in power now 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't he build up their military to prepare for the military to invade Western Europe? He didn't.
Mm-hmm.
He basically just had self defense. So,
Mm-hmm.
2.5 years ago, when he sends his military into Ukraine to go to Kiev,
Mm-hmm.
in a way, he was bluffing because
Mm-hmm.
he didn't have enough soldiers in his military to do an invasion of anybody. But the
Right.
idea was he was sending a message that he would invade if they join NATO or if they keep doing that. And
Mm-hmm.
so what happens is, as I mentioned, Zelensky even agreeing originally to staying neutral, then they changed their mind because of pressure from the UK and the United States and the rest of NATO.
Mm-hmm.
So then Putin takes his tanks back,
Mm-hmm.
goes
Right.
back out across the border into Russia, and
Mm-hmm.
he basically says, okay, that was a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't, normally you shouldn't bluff. When you send your military out to do something, they need to at least be capable of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
His was not at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So he sends his military back, and then they actively begin recruiting, calling up reserves, intensifying their military training, stepping up their production of military hardware from tanks to missiles to bullets to airplanes, all of the equipment that they would need. And so he spends all of that time building that back up. So
Mm-hmm.
now Russia has the most powerful military in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
more than NATO, more than us, way more. They've already wiped out 95% of the Ukrainian military.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they're at. Now, Putin could now, he would have the strength to go in. He's already said he not only does not want to go into Western Europe and
Mm-hmm.
invade any of those countries,
Mm-hmm.
however, he will attack any country that sends missiles against Russia or is used as military bases to attack Russia. He'll attack back, but he doesn't want to conquer them and be in charge of them,
Right.
including Ukraine. He has said many times he has no desire to take over control of Ukraine. None. He just wants to be able to ensure that Ukraine does not join NATO and
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine does not allow the US and other NATO countries to put weapons and missiles, offensive equipment right on the Russian border.
Mm-hmm. So what happened right now is related to a half centuries ago, like related to World War II. I understand if FBI wants to do something to stop the spread of the Communist Party, like Soviet Union after World War II. But just like you said, Putin would not be another Stalin, would not have the Russian become a Soviet Union. And if that's the case, why an American or NATO or CIA still try to destroy Russia? So
Because
that
they hate Russia. They're lying about Putin's intentions. And what's interesting, Putin is probably the most pro-Western leader of any of the high-ranking officials in Russia.
mhm,
He was in charge of the KGB in St. Petersburg.
right.
So basically, is like a Western city or Western location during the Soviet Union.
Mhm,
Then he lived in Germany. He was among many Europeans. He's very pro-European.
Right.
And in a way, he tried to join NATO and they rejected him. So
Mm-hmm.
he's tried to have peaceful relations with NATO, with the
Right.
United States
Mm-hmm.
all along.
Mm-hmm.
It's not Putin rejecting the West, it's the West rejecting Putin.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, Putin has a capability this minute to wipe out Ukraine, completely go into Kiev, take over, no question about it. He's
Mm-hmm.
holding back. He
Mm-hmm.
also doesn't want to kill Americans. He's been very reluctant to get too aggressive because
Right.
he knows he'll be killing Americans.
Right.
So he doesn't want that. So and then anytime he hesitates or shows patience, then our leaders here say, see, he's a coward. See, he's
Mm-hmm.
weak. He can't do it. We're doing the right thing. And
Right.
you have our politicians basically saying, like in the Ukraine war, the good thing about the Ukraine war is it's all Ukrainians getting killed, no Americans. Well, conservative estimates now say that Ukraine has had 600,000 soldiers killed, other hundreds of thousands amputees and severely wounded and all of that. So you hear our politicians on the Sunday morning news shows saying, well, that's a good thing. At least it's not Americans dying. Well, how evil is that? That as long as 600,000 people die, they're Ukrainian and not American, that's good. We like that. That's fine. We'll just keep funding it so they do that. Now, the other thing I've talked about before,
Mm-hmm.
it still applies, is that the Biden crime family is one of the most corrupt families in US history.
Mm-hmm.
And even before, when Biden was vice president, when Biden, was moving up the chain, later becomes president, he has taken in bribery millions of dollars from the Ukraine,
Right.
from Romania and some other countries, China, but Ukraine. And so, my experience working when I was in charge of the organized crime program, organized crime families cannot flourish without corruption. They need corrupt politicians, corrupt police officers, corrupt judges to
Right.
help them maintain their business. And
Like,
so Biden and the Ukraine has funded the Biden administration. We know about Hunter working on the board of Burisma, their energy company. We know of tens of millions of dollars. Congress has found the transfer documents from the banks. Other investigators, like my good friend Peter Schweitzer and others, have found the documents that show money going from China, Ukraine, and other countries directly to the Bidens,
right.
directly into LLCs, like limited liability corporations
Mm-hmm.
created by the Bidens.
Right.
And so, my experience in the FBI was if you have, whether it's anybody, taking bribery money, the expectation is that whoever gives them the money can tell them what to do and
Mm-hmm.
what not to do. So
Yes.
you had that in the United States when the mafia would give money to the mayor or to the chief of police or to judges. They expected that those entities would benefit them with their
Mm-hmm.
policies and procedures. Well,
Right.
that's exactly what you have with Ukraine from the beginning. Biden becomes president, and Zelensky is immediately calling, saying, we need tens of millions of dollars. We need $1 billion. We need this. And Biden can't wait to send it to him
Right.
because he owes them
Mm-hmm.
and they can expose him. They
Mm-hmm.
can they can corroborate what the House of Representatives and other investigators have already found, the transfers
Mm-hmm.
of the money to the Bidens, all the way down to his grandchildren.
Right.
And so the Ukraine can back up those transfers and say, yeah, we sent him all that money. He is crooked. We paid him off. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why he sends all this money to Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
So the United States is complicit. Our Congress sending the money is complicit in how many Ukrainians have died in that war.
It's really, when you talk about that, when you know the truth, it's really evil.
It's very evil.
Behind
And
it.
what's going to happen? Nothing.
Right, right. So for tomorrow, the debate, what's your prediction of the debate?
And it's going to be very interesting.
Uh-huh.
When Trump debated Biden back in June,
Mhm.
his advisors basically told him, don't beat up the old man.
Right.
Don't look mean. Don't look, because the allegations politically against Trump have always been he's mean. He sends out mean tweets. He picks on people. He's evil. He's no good, blah, blah, blah. So they were telling his advisors and debate coaches pretty much said, don't go out of your way to beat up Biden. Let him beat up himself.
Right.
The old expression, give him enough rope and let him hang himself. And
Uh-huh.
that's what happened in the debate. The more Biden talks, the more he hangs himself.
Mm-hmm.
And then the manner of his speech actually showed that he couldn't make a sentence. He couldn't make sense, that he was very, very
Mm-hmm.
cognitively deficient. Now, what's interesting is that I believe this was a plan on the part of Obama, on the part of the elite in the Democratic Party,
Mm-hmm.
to have this debate happen in June rather than most presidential debates are after both conventions, beginning of September, like
Right.
we're going to have tomorrow with Kamala Harris and Trump.
Mm-hmm.
But the bosses of the Democratic Party have been protecting Joe Biden for 3.5 years. Oh, he's as sharp as a tack. He's not deficient. He's not old. He's articulate. He's the
Oh,
greatest
right.
president we ever had. And then
Mm-hmm.
they decided, we want to get rid of Biden because he's losing so badly to Trump.
Mm-hmm.
The best thing we can do is let Biden ruin Biden's career,
Mm-hmm.
have the debate early. And that way, Biden will basically fail completely. And then they could put pressure on him for him to quit the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens. And they put pressure on Biden, make promises to him that we still have to see. How much
Mm-hmm.
money did they promise him to quit?
Mm-hmm.
They promised him that somebody will pardon Hunter Biden if he quits. They'll take care of Hunter. They'll take care of the family. They won't go after the money.
They
So
have a deal.
yeah,
Yeah, they
so,
must have a deal.
but they had to do it as early as possible to
Mm-hmm.
allow time. And then Biden had received almost 15 million votes in all the primaries added up. So
Mm-hmm.
now Biden stops running for president, and they make him basically say, "I support Kamala Harris."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
And he didn't do that right away. So then that's the idea, is that Biden steps aside and Kamala becomes the nominee. Now it's interesting. Kamala has never won a single primary, not in 2020, not in
Mm-hmm.
2024, never. And
Mm-hmm.
suddenly, without a single vote from a Democrats, she becomes their nominee for
Mm-hmm.
president of the United States.
Right.
And immediately you have these phony polls showing that she's even with Trump or ahead of
Yeah.
Trump or whatever. So now, if you're President Trump, what do you do in the debate? Do you give her enough rope? It might not be enough for her to hang herself because they've already rehearsed enough with her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, does he attack? Does he say, wait a minute, you were against fracking, now you say you're for it. You were against one thing, now you're for it. You copy my idea of don't tax tips and some other things. You
Mm-hmm.
say you're not going to raise taxes. You've already said your whole career you're going to raise taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So does he get aggressive and tough?
Mm-hmm.
And then he'll get a backlash from the media. Oh, he's anti-woman. He's anti-black. He's anti-Indian.
Right.
Whatever race she tries to claim
Mm-hmm.
today.
Right.
So
So,
years ago, she was going to be the first Indian presidential nominee from India, Indian background.
mm-hmm.
Then she's going to be the black.
Right.
Well, there's not much black in her, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest, but they're claiming it. And when Trump or anybody says, well, what is she? Black, Indian, what? Oh, he's a racist. Right away they jump on him for racism.
Right.
So
The way they.
now it's interesting. Trump has picked one of the people in the world I respect the most as a debate coach, Tulsi Gabbard. So that'll be terrific. RFK Jr. is supposed to be the other coach. We'll see how that goes. So I
Mm-hmm.
would be curious, and I think we probably won't know completely until tomorrow night,
Mm-hmm.
of does Trump go after her aggressively and attack every one of her stupid policy proposals? Does he kind of lay back and let her make these proposals and kill herself, her candidacy?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know for sure.
We'll
I don't
see.
know.
We'll see, because Kamala Harris is not like Joe Biden. She can speak anything she wants, and any lies from her mouth, it's just like a normal thing. So I think she will have a lots of lies tomorrow at the debate.
No,
And
and whatever Trump decides, the
mhm.
next time we do this podcast, I'll say, "See, I told you he was going to do that.
Yeah,
That's what I
next,
said he was going to do."
yeah, so we'll see. But yeah, I agree with you. He picked up very, very good coaches
Yeah,
about this debate.
yeah,
And I heard that Kamala Harris even have someone acting like Trump,
yeah.
like a Trump to debate with her. And she some people said she's really nervous, but we'll see what's gonna happen tomorrow. I saw some posts that said Trump will win big, huge, for the debate. So we'll see. I'm not curious about how Trump do. I'm curious about how Kamala Harris will do. Is she okay with the debate, or she is in a normal situation? Because lots of time when you see her talking, she's like a drunk or have something happen before.
That's what you look at the different podcasts and YouTube channels and stuff.
Right.
There are some people saying she's an alcoholic because
Yeah, it's
they're
weird,
talking about that in
right?
situations
Right.
where she had to be drunk to act that way or to say what she said, and some of the other things that she's done. But I don't
Right.
know. I don't know if that's. But I think in time, all of this will come out.
Right.
So
So we can
we've
talk
got.
about. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I say we have about 2 months for all of the truth to start coming out.
Right, and we can talk about the debate next time, next week. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we have some.
Whatever happens, I told
Uh-huh.
you so.
I got it. Okay. Yeah, I have some friends say hi to you. And then one security said FBI, society, I'm sorry, society said FBI was the name of justice. Yeah, I think they agree with me. He or she agree with me that when we heard the name of FBI back in China, it's a big name and a respectable
All
name.
over the world.
Yeah,
I've been to 100 different countries, many
right,
of them 6, 7, 8 times, including China. And
right.
everywhere I go, still to this day,
Mhm.
the rest of the world has unbelievable respect for the FBI. Their
Right,
law enforcement, their justice people,
right,
tremendous respect for the FBI.
right.
And it's astonishing to me, as many things as the FBI has been involved in the last 5, 6 years,
Yeah,
and that weren't corrected by Christopher Wray, and
right.
allowing these renegades to go wild, like Peter Strzok and some of the others, McCabe. It's just unbelievable to me that the FBI. When I tell people where I worked, oh,
Mhm.
they worship me. You think I was the Pope, that, and and I don't. I'm not going to criticize the FBI overseas. I'll
Mhm.
criticize it here with facts,
Mhm.
but I don't say anything bad about the FBI around the world, especially because the FBI's agents, many of which I put in those offices,
Mhm.
the 80 offices, they're doing, for the most part, tremendous work to help protect the United States from criminals, from spies, from a variety of threats.
Mhm.
And I want to do nothing in that environment that's going to diminish their capability.
Sure, sure. Understand. Yeah, and then also we have Lao Pu Guizhen saying, "Hi, Tom. Congratulations, Tom. Yeah, congratulations for your anniversary. It is,
Thank
and
you.
yeah,
Thank
it is. I like to say that we really thank you for your service.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, for your service. Continue after you retired. You use some other way to still serve the country, still serve the people. And thank you so very much. And then again, many thanks and congratulations.
Thank you.
Sure. And then next week, we'll talk about the debate. And of course, you said that already. You're
Yep.
right.
Right.
Right? Okay. Thank you so much. And I will do the Chinese version later today, and then
Okay.
we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you.